We're happy to be back on Cinema Synopsis channel, and today we're going to recap the adventure comedy drama movie 777 Charlie from the year 2022. Hundreds of canines are being imprisoned by a horribly cruel breeder at a desolate home in India. One night, a daring puppy decides to take the risk and jumps out of the house, never to return. Dharma is a hard-headed, lonely man who lives somewhere in a tranquil society. Since his parents tragically passed away when he was a little child in an accident, Dharma has had a solitary life. His daily routine now includes getting up, eating, and going to work. He then returns home, drinks his usual beer, smokes a cigarette, and goes to bed. Dharma doesn't have any friends and doesn't want to have any in his life, although living in a society that is rather wonderful. In his office, Dharma, who has never taken a single day off, is regarded as the best employee in the entire firm and has successfully adjusted to his life of solitude. However, he also lacks a companion at that place and frequently avoids the commotion that people bring to him. But all was about to change when the puppy from earlier wandered into Dharma's social circle. Dharma had been feeding the puppy inadvertently because he always threw out the food that he believed was extra because he lived alone. Due to this, the puppy's affection for the man had already risen, and she had grown fond of Dharma. One day, some local officials throw a sizable party for the entire community. Despite what most people in society would like to avoid, there is loud music, noise, and, most importantly, fireworks. Dharma initially doesn't give a damn about what anyone else is doing and rejects requests from members of the community to interfere with the party organizers. However, when night falls, Dharma is so disturbed by the loud noise and fireworks that he is unable to go asleep. Due to the loud noises outside, the dog is also quite frightened and hides behind her normal garbage disposal just as Dharma wakes up and marches to the party in a fit of wrath. He defaces the entire area and raises a commotion by beating each thug individually. After destroying the party, Dharma finally exhales with relief and returns to his house. As the puppy sees all of this, she is certain of whom she can trust for the upcoming days. To Dharma's chagrin, the puppy begins to follow him around. Most significantly, she also appears at his house. Dharma tries his best to ignore the puppy that follows him around since he is so disturbed by it. But one day, when the puppy chased him home from work, one of his colony's hooligans drove carelessly and ended up running over the dog with his motorbike. Everyone rushes to the hooligan's aid while cursing the crying puppy in the streets. Dharma takes a cursory glance at the puppy before turning around and returning to his house. However, he cannot handle the guilt of abandoning a helpless animal on the streets and rushes to the rescue, taking the puppy to the nearest veterinarian. The dog is initially terrified of the needles and the physicians, but she soon relaxes and receives treatment. Thankfully, the puppy manages to escape with very little damage and will soon enough make a full recovery. Dharma had completed his mission and was ready to return to his regular life, but Dr. Ashwin wouldn't let him simply leave the puppy at the hospital. Ashwin is fairly pushy about the fact that they can't add more babies to their already lengthy list of puppies, but Dharma is adamant that it was not his puppy and that he wanted nothing to do with the small one. Instead, the doctor suggests that he recommend the puppy to anyone who visits his hospital to adopt a dog. Up until that point, Dharma had to care for the puppy. Only 4 days, to be precise, would pass before everything was resolved. Dharma gently explains to the doctor that dogs are not even permitted in his civilization, therefore the entire plan is absurd, but the doctor shows no signs of giving in. In the end, Dharma returns the dog to his home while keeping it concealed under his shirt. Over the course of the following few days, Dharma cares for the dog, but only minimally, and the puppy isn't exactly a nice girl either. She essentially destroys his home every time and causes him a lot of trouble, especially when the ice cream commercials with the falling snowflakes appear on television. In order to find a quick remedy for the puppy, Dharma calls him. Dr. Ashwin informs Dharma that the puppy needs to be properly fed in order for potential adopters to snap her up because she is too skinny and barely appears healthy. Dharma had been feeding the puppy the same food he had been eating up until this point, but now he is bringing in proper dog food so that she will become better and he can get rid of her. Several additional weeks go by, and soon the dog gets bigger and stronger, but its antics never stop. The puppy was finally adopted by a family thanks to the efforts of the doctor. All she had to do was behave well. However, when the new family comes to see the puppy makes a huge mess and nearly wrecks Dharma's entire house. Deal was off since there was no chance the family would accept such an untrained dog. Dharma was forced to keep the puppy, but he was still determined to get rid of it as soon as possible. The doctor suggests that he obtain a dog license to establish himself as a responsible dog owner and to give the adoption procedure more legitimacy. Dharma meets Devika, the animal rights officer, at the location where the licenses are distributed. Before she issues the license, Devika needs to collect certain data, but Dharma hasn't even given the dog a name. When Devika asks him to give the puppy a name, he just calls it Choo Choo. Devika thinks Dharma is acting strangely during the entire procedure and doesn't feel comfortable entrusting him with another being's life. Even though there are no indications of torture in the room, Devika and her colleagues visit Dharma's home the very next day to see if he was treating the dog appropriately. Devika continues to caution Dharma that failing to handle animals humanely will result in harsh penalties. Dharma realizes the puppy went outdoors but did not come back soon after she departs. He walks outside to call the dog back but collapses to the ground due to a panic attack. There is no one to watch for Dharma, so the puppy chases after the ambulance as he makes his way to the hospital. He was alone at the hospital, as he had been his entire life. However, the dog is there for him this time. Dharma hears the dog crying out for him and, after having a change of heart, begins to like the dog and the changes it has brought about in his life. But soon after, a different group of adopters shows up at his house to take the puppy. This time, the family takes the dog without asking, and Dharma, who had always supported giving her away, is left with little choice but to wait and observe her departure while crying. However, a few days later, Dharma is asked to sign the puppy's adoption papers and arrives at the family's home, which the dog has ruined just like she did with Dharma's home. The family doesn't even stop him as he smiles and carries the dog back to his house, possibly due to how much bother she had caused them. Dharma had reclaimed his life at last. He was no longer the lonesome, stubborn man he had been. With the puppy entering his life, everything changes, and he finds a new perspective on life with his newly discovered happiness in his life. He feels joyful after such a long period. In honor of his favorite performer, Charlie Chaplin, Dharma names the puppy Charlie. The two have been getting along just fine until Charlie refuses to let Dharma go to his job one day. Dharma hands her the ball before heading off to work even though he doesn't understand why Charlie is acting up. Finally returning from his office, Dharma finds Charlie in the same location as when he had left her. Dharma initially believes that she had swallowed the ball and rushes to the hospital while professing his regret. However, the doctor informs him that Charlie's illness was caused by cancer rather than that. The doctor reassures him that it wasn't his fault because he had done everything in his power to take care of Charlie, and how could she have such an illness? Dharma is horrified. In reality, the cancer had already spread and there was no treatment available. It was a genetic condition common in dogs that were inbred for sale, and this was all the breeder's fault. Her life may be extended by the medications, but that is all. Dharma is in ruins. Charlie was all he had ever desired, and now that she was being taken away from him at home, too, Dharma pouts, is upset, and is unsure of what to do. but thinks all of a sudden that doing anything is preferable to moping around. Since he was aware that Charlie Snow had always been really enthusiastic about this, he decided to present it to her. The two companions set off on their long journey from South India to Shimla, where they hoped to see snow on the slopes at that point. But before anything else, Dharma uses the help of the doctor to track down the location of the cruel breeder who is to blame for Charlie's problems. After beating the man into submission and punishing him by burying his neck deep in the dirt, he immediately returns to his isolated home. Elsewhere, when Devika, who had slyly put a tracker on Charlie, sees that Dharma has departed with Charlie, she sends her team to the area where they discover hundreds of dogs and the breeder. When the breeder is taken into custody, Devika pursues Dharma and eventually discovers him presumably imprisoned while the others take care of the just discovered puppies. Charlie and her owner Dharma were imprisoned after Charlie ran amok in the streets pursuing a mouse and shattered a police car's window. To save Charlie from the bad man, Devika grudgingly releases them both and travels with Dharma and Charlie. But when she stops to ask about Charlie's role in stopping the breeder and saving all those puppies, she learns that he did so about halfway through the trek. Devika finally admits her error and even offers to help the pair. She gets in touch with some of her pals from travel journals and aids Dharma and Charlie in telling their story to the globe. Devika finally splits up with the pair, and Dharma and Charlie are back on the road. The trip continues well, but soon the pair encounters financial difficulties. They are compelled to sell everything they have in order to pay for food and supplies because Dharma's company is unable to pay him the money he was promised. Even their petrol soon runs out, rendering the bike useless. Fortunately for them, a kind man named Bakshi and his dog Blackie offer the two transportation and a place to stay for a few days. Bakshi is likewise a damaged guy. His wife left him as a result of their deteriorating marriage. Blackie, his dog, was the only one to have stuck by his side all the way to the end, thus he would die loving the dog. Charlie and Blackie grow close during their time spent staying with Bakshi and Blackie, and the two are practically inseparable. The two are forced to split ways a few days later because of their separate journeys that had to be made. They appear to be on track to get to their destination on time and everything appears to be in order, but it turns out that the road ahead was closed by a landslide, and the army would not permit anyone to pass out of concern for safety. The troops won't just allow anyone through as Dharma rages and demands a passage. The soldiers drag Dharma to their superior when he tries to push through. Fortunately for them, the army chief enjoys reading trip journals and has read their entire account. He therefore permits them to stay at the army camp and journey to the hill the next morning. The two set out to witness the first snowfall the following morning after the army had cleared everything. And the two spend a wonderful time together, possibly their last few moments alone. They went back to the camp after a fun day so they could go home. Dharma wakes up the following morning from his sleep to see that Charlie has vanished. After searching everywhere for his companion, he finally locates her in a little shed on a hill, where she is nearly lifeless and exhausted. Dharma discovers her there and embraces her in his arms as she breathes her last breath, saying goodbye to his only companion. As she passes, he yells in pain, but then Dharma hears another dog howl from within the shed. She had given birth to a little puppy that belonged to Charlie. Dharma comes home with Charlie's puppy after finally understanding the meaning of his existence. In his hometown, Dharma establishes a brand new animal rescue facility called Charlie's Place. Charlie was already gone, but Dharma still cherishes the memory of his close buddy and how she impacted his life. That's all for this video. If you like it, please subscribe for more, use the like button to support us, and leave a comment if you'd want us to review a certain film. Until next time.